Shalom Aleichem, welcome. I'm Lisa Newman, the Yiddish Book Center's Director of Publishing and Public Programs, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's program, A Tourist Guide to Lost Yiddish New York City, with Henry Sapoznik. Before we get started, a few things to talk about in terms of housekeeping. Your audio and video will be off throughout the program. You may send us questions via the question panel at the lower right of your screen. We ask that you refrain from comments and keep questions short so that we can try to get to all of them this evening. It is a packed to the max virtual theater this evening. Henry Sapoznik is a record producer and performer of traditional Yiddish and American music. A child of Holocaust survivors, he grew up in a Yiddish-speaking home. A pioneering scholar and performer of Klezmer music, Henry founded the first archives of Yiddish recordings as the director of Archives of Recorded Sound at the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research from 1982 to 1994. Spearheading the renewal of interest in klezmer music with his group Capella, he authored several books on klezmer music and a Grammy-nominated producer, performer of historical and new recordings of Yiddish instrumental and vocal music. He's the author of the book Klezmer, Yiddish Music from Old World to World Music, and co-producer with David Isay of On the Air, Yiddish American Radio, 1925 to 1955. Welcome, Henry.
Hi, Lisa. Oh, there. Oops.
We hear, but we don't see.
Oh my, where am I?
You're sharing your screen.
Oh, that is oh, hold on. This
Okay.
is my apologies. My apologies. I was just working with 78 recordings of this technology. Great. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, it's really a treat to have you on this evening's program, and really congratulations from every one of us at the Yiddish Book Center on the recent release of your book, The Tourist Guide to Lost New York City. It's wow. I'll borrow from a little bit of the blurb: theater, music, architecture, crime, blacks and Jews, restaurants, real estate, and journalism. And then in my words, who but you could have penned such a glorious book about Yiddish in New York City. So thank you for that, Henry. To get us started, I thought it would be interesting to ask you if you could speak a little bit about your Yiddish background, both personal and professional.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, my parents were survivors. They were from the Polish city of Rovna and lived through the war. Came here in 1950. I was born not long after. Spoke Yiddish at home. My mother would tell me years later that when I was 5 or 6, because I was learning English from other survivors, I sounded like a 50-year-old immigrant. So, but grew up Yiddish at home. My father was a chazan, and I went to Lubavitch. I was in yeshiva until after my bar mitzvah. So I learned kind of home Yiddish. I learned Taich for being in yeshiva. And it wasn't until after I had been playing traditional old-time banjo for a number of years that I got into klezmer that I was able to tap into the culture that I grew up with, and so it's been a through part of my kind of cultural and psychological life. So,
May I ask you, how was that for your parents, seeing you go into that?
oh gosh, they were not thrilled with the folky thing. My father had called, says, sitzt bei sich und drimpelt. To drimple, it was to idly or thoughtlessly strum on an instrument. They didn't like the country music. But once I started doing Yiddish stuff, and happily, both my parents, my father, again, wonderful chazan, sang with some great chazanim, Gershon Sirota, Moshe Kusevitsky. My mom was a terrific traditional singer, folk singer, so They were I think on a scale of 1 to 10 on the Nachas scale, it was probably 11. So they were part of it, and of course they were part of a lot of the stuff, presenting stuff. They were at Klezmer for many years. I toured with my father. The Back when the federal government used to fund traditional folk arts and put them on tour. Can you imagine such a time?
Such a
Uh,
time.
yeah. So yeah, it's been a great through part of my life.
And in a word, the book is a gem. And it really, through the stories you tell of individuals, places, events, I think you tell a larger story and introduce, I know I felt this way as the reader, uh, to a world of Yiddish New York City. I grew up not far from New York City, but this opened up places and people that I had no idea about. And I'm curious, given your background, what drew you to telling this story?
Whew, well, this compendium of all, because it's basically it's an ingathering of a lot of essays that I have written both for years. Some of this stuff dates back that I've been looking at for pretty much since I first got involved with performing Yiddish music. But the real the real impetus happened during COVID. My music performing had sort of dried up. A lot of the venues were no longer functioning, and I decided to build a website to give me an outlet for just having a creative outlet to keep fresh. And the first thing I did, I built a blog, and by sheer coincidence, not long before, a 78 record that I had been looking for, I kid you not, 40 years, turned up. And it was a recording of the Schwarze Chasen, the Black Cantor, Thomas LaRue Jones. I had been looking for this record since I started the YIVO Sound Archives. And I was so overwhelmed by finally being able to hear it that I did a blog entry. I did my first blog entry. And before I knew it, there were like 60,000 hits on this. I don't claim to understand how to manipulate things like that, but it started, I then, that kind of triggered my doing additional research. So I did another blog about the first Black woman cantor. And then I did a one about the recording. Anyway, at the end of the day, it was like, I don't know, 150,000 people had chimed in, and I was so it was like this revelation that here's something that was my own personal mishigas, and suddenly there are people interested in this. So I gathered both the essays that I had created for the blog, and a number of things that I had been writing, culture pieces for the forward for since the English language paper started in 1990, and I would periodically write more. Anyway, I started ingathering these, and I saw that it was like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, and I couldn't quite tell the picture because there was still needed to be more stories told. So I spent the next couple of years doing original research in order to kind of give some context. Uh, in the course of what became the book, I downloaded and referenced about 5,000 Yiddish newspaper articles from just across American and European. So there became a kind of a narrative in the words of the moment. I wasn't interpreting it. This was the actual stuff. So anyway, I ended up with all of these things. I said, let me get this out. And I had a friend who is a publisher at a vest pocket little a publishing house, Excelsior Press, and very generously gave me a place to park these. And it took, if I started in 20, it took about 5 years to ingather the pieces and create a kind of a see what narrative where I went. As you were saying, when you look at these pieces all together, what's the story? And it became this incredible kind of I've always been interested in the intersection of traditional arts and dominant culture. How does a minority community, how is someone who is not equipped to navigate through this new system, how do they focus on and interpret the dominant culture? So I ended up, discovering about the Yiddish Uncle Tom shows, which I mean, I just love that stuff where you have two really defined minority cultures, and then you say, well, how do they interpret this, and what did it mean to them to be interpreting it? So each of the chapters is a place that I had either done before and then new research has emerged, or it was stuff like that I had always wished I had written about, like dairy restaurants and delicatessens. And so anyway, that's what it is. It was a fortuitous ingathering of materials, both old and newly created.
The expression "who knew" is attached to much of my reading. So I did give you a little bit of forewarning of a few things that I was going to ask you about so that you could put together some pictures. So the first one was this story just absolutely surprised me. Talk about the Schultz Spa in Central Park, please.
Okay. First, no pictures of the and I looked, boy, did I look. When I wrote my chapter on carbonated Jewish beverages on the Dr. Brown's celery tonic, I felt I had to go, where did this whole carbonated water thing come from? And so that's how I came across the story of Carl A. Schultz, who was a assayer for the federal government, but his hobby was recreating the carbonated water of European spas. What a mission in life. And he wrote what was, in essence, a best-selling book about carbonation, including from the various spa towns, including the town Seltzer, which became seltzer to our. So I was so fascinated because this era that he existed in, the end of the 19th century, was the rise of utopian societies, pure food legislation, a lot of health spas like the Kellogg's, things like that. So I was interested that on the one hand, he was creating this thing which was about health, it was about purity, it was about uplift. But for us, it eventually led the way to being something that helps you grips, so it just clears out your system. So the amazing thing was finding out about his spa, his in the middle of Central Park, which he had he had recreated the carbonated water of 25 European spas and had bands playing the music from those areas. It was probably an amazing experience.
I can only imagine if if we could bring back Schultz's Spa in Central Park. It could be something, Henry.
Sign me up.
Okay. All right. And here's another improbable story that I loved. Max Bernstein and Libby's restaurant. I'm just going to tease this out. The sleeping patrons and the resulting hotel.
Wow.
Crazy.
What this is one of the most uplifting and one of the most heartbreaking. Let me share the picture here because this is get this because okay, yes, I do, please. Um, the Max Bernstein was a visionary, and he started a dairy restaurant in the Lower East Side and in Harlem. And one of the things that he had noticed, part of the thing I discovered in doing the research about this story was that there is fabulous research and writing about the hotels, the Jewish hotels in the Catskills. I don't think you can swing a boiled chicken without hitting a book about the hotels in the Catskills. But there was nothing written about New York City Jewish hotels. And the story of Max Bernstein, who was inspired to build his hotel, because when he had opened his restaurant, he found that the Jews who came to eat at his dairy restaurant would fall asleep in their seats because they had nowhere to sleep in New York City. And he was inspired by this, and also to memorialize his late mother, Liebe, and her anglicized name was Libby. And he willed into existence. This is the amazing thing that he, by sheer dint of will, he constructed a massive 14-story hotel on the corner of Delancey and Christie Street that was the envy of every other hotelier in New York. Huge amounts of publicity and an unbelievable, the first major construction in a lot of ways. And in my book, I talk about the three skyscrapers of the Lower East Side, and this was one of them. The Forward Building was another, and the third was the Yarmoluski Bank. But this hotel was a clubhouse for every Jew in New York. It was their place, and the pride that the community had in this amazing building that was all of the ballyhoo about how it was built and what it contained was not ballyhoo. It was an unbelievably lush and exuberant construction. The tragedy was that he fell victim to a real estate scandal that was encouraged by the mayor of the town, Walker, and the governor. Anyway, he fell behind in his payments. The company that held the mortgage bought it back for pennies and then tore the building down in record time. There is no evidence that this astounding structure ever existed. And after the hotel, it only lasted, it went up in 26, it was torn down by 28. And sadly, Bernstein disappeared after this. But the Libby's Hotel, a friend of mine is writing a whole book about it, which should be out next year. So I'm really excited about that. But the Libby's Hotel was one of the great moments in Jewish pride and in self-expression that unfortunately has been lost because of its disappearance and destruction.
Yeah. Here's another one that, and I hope I get his last name correct, Frank Seiden. It's a great story. The sleight of hand, the magic, the saloon, the phonograph dealer. How did you find him?
Gosh, well, Frank Seiden, what an amazing story. I first learned about Frank Seiden when I was working at the YIVO, I was helping a discographer, someone who creates listing of recordings. I was working with Dick Spotswood to put together a discography of all the ethnic records made in the U.S. between 1895 and 1942. And I was in charge of the Jewish catalog. And one of the first names that I came across, one of the first recording artists, was Frank Seiden. And so I'd already had heard his recordings. He was a true pioneer. We're talking about 1900, 1901. The sound recording was only like 10 years old at the time. But Seiden had an incredible trajectory in his life. And let me that's Frank Seiden
Mm.
standing in the center with the hat and the cane. Um, After he left recording, he began running a series of Nickelodeons. The original Nickelodeons were for sound recordings, not yet film. And he got into running Nickelodeons. He made the transition from recordings to film, and in theaters like this. And what was so amazing, and we see this picture, which I love. I got this from our friends at the Jewish film collection. There's so much information in this picture because we see both American films and Yiddish plays. We see the retention of culture and the in-group and the language. Some of the smaller signs that I have obsessively read are about where you can stay when you're coming for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So this is not just a theater, but this is a clearinghouse for the continuity of Yiddish literature and also a gateway for assimilating into dominant culture. And Seiden went from being a performer. Oh, I left out his. Can I not talk about his stint as a magician?
That was wild.
Oh, well, this was actually the coolest thing. I found a reference to him owning a saloon on the Lower East Side. Now, it turns out he was what they called legerdemain. He would do very close-up tricks with cards and was noted for his distractive tactics. What did that mean? He would be doing a trick, and then he would be giving this little narrative, but in this mangled, twisted, accented English, Yinglish, and people were so distracted by that he had all these amazing tricks. Anyway, he got his saloon in a poker game. Who would play poker with a guy who is great at card tricks? It doesn't make any sense. But Seiden was also touched by he was known as the Fire King and did had an act of eating fire. Tragically, a daughter of his died in a fire in their home. So it was like this weird sort of he benefited from it and he was a victim of it. This picture taken around 1912 from here. He retired not long after. His son, who was seated to in the white shirt and the black tie, Joseph Seiden. If folks are interested in Yiddish film, he directed and produced several dozen Yiddish films during the 30s and 40s. So there was a strong continuity of that family. Seiden died in 1930 and had the discography that I worked on. Had we not published that, his contribution as a pioneering recording artist to record, he was one of the first people to record Goldfaden arias that had not been heard before. Anyway, I am the idea that I can reanimate the amazing contributions that he made is just pretty thrilling.
And so another piece, Lowe's Commodore from him.
Oh, you know what? You know what I
Yeah.
have? I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. If with your indulgence,
Yes, absolutely.
um, when I was doing the research on him, I found this amazing description of his theater that I would like to share with you. Um, of all people, this description of the theater that we are looking at came out of a memoir called I Love Her, That's Why, an autobiography written by George Burns. This, so I could not believe that connection because we want to believe that these early vaudevillians, the Jews and stuff, we want to believe that they were part of the continuity. But here was an actual description. And again, I hope I have time.
Oh, it's such a delicious passage. Please, please, please.
Okay,
I
great. Now,
remember reading
unfortunately,
this.
I don't have my George Burns impersonation on yet, so you'll have to indulge me.
Okay.
Um, this was a picture house which ran vaudeville acts as well. There was a pool hall downstairs, and it was difficult to hear either the vaudeville acts before the movie or the music accompanying the picture. The noise of the pool balls drowned out almost all other sounds. The movies were made as silent pictures, but by the time the Seidens, father and sons, got through with them, they were anything but. So the three of them, Mr. Seiden, Joe, and Jack, stood behind the screen and talked for the actors. They had a few regular parts. Joe was always the girl, although he played other parts as well. The theater ran two vaudeville acts, one in Yiddish and one in English. The Burns brothers' job was to handle the curtain. This took a bit of doing because the curtain rolled up from the bottom on a heavy wooden pole, which was controlled by ropes on either side of the stage. Burns and Burns together weighed about 120 pounds, and the pole weighed half again as much. We were able to get the curtain up twice without staggering. But if the act went over big and they took more than two curtain calls, we were dead. One week, Seiden booked a Yiddish sketch called Religion versus Love. The plot involved a Gentile girl who wanted her Jewish lover to give up his religion and marry her. The smash finish of the act was when the boy cried, "No! I am a Jew I was born, and a Jew I shall die." Well, this was good for about 15 curtain calls. And with each, we got weaker and the curtain got lower. For the last bow, the actors were lying on their stomachs. That is so George Burns.
It's so priceless. You can kind of imagine it. All right, we're gonna move on to
Okay, thank you.
but thank you. You found all these gems in here like that, Henry. But that's what you're all about is
Thank
great research. Um, Lowe's Commodore, otherwise the Fillmore East. Yes. Um, Will you share a bit about its history? Because it lives in many different decades.
The chapter I wrote about Harrison G. Wiseman, the architect who designed what was what would become the Fillmore. I was amazed that when I began my research on him, and I had known about his involvement with what was the Commodore, because I had befriended someone who was doing, get this, a 3D recreation of the Fillmore East. I mean, this is going to be amazing when he gets it done. When I
Wow.
was doing my research, I was amazed to find that Wiseman, who was not Jewish, despite the euphonious sound of his name, had also designed four other Yiddish theaters, I mean, four theaters in total, including the theater that's still on 12th Street and Second Avenue, which is currently the Angelica, beautiful restoration of the theater. So I was fascinated how one guy would have been the architect for some of the major Yiddish theaters of the time, the Maurice Schwartz Theater, the Parkway Theater in the Bronx. So going back again, one of the things I really enjoyed doing was the newspaper search by address, and I found the prehistory of what was in that space prior to it. So finding out the beginnings of what was the Commodore Theater, the M&S Commodore Theater, to Yidlach from the Lower East Side, Meyer and Schneider uh, build an empire, and this was the diamond in the tiara of the Meyer and Schneider vaudeville empire on the Lower East Side. Um, so they eventually went out of business. It was obtained by the Lowe's, Marcus Lowe, another Yiddle. Um, and eventually, this little corner, I love this picture on the left. This was, people might not know, during 1940 in New York City, the tax department in a project with the WPA took photographs of every building in New York City. Every building in New York City. And that's what that little sign in the front there, that indicates. I love this picture. Why? Because it's a confluence of the energy of what was Yiddish Lower East Side. On the left, we see Ratner's, the original Ratner's restaurant before it got larger. In the center, the Commodore Theater, which had Yiddish vaudeville, and to the right of it, Central Plaza, which had a Yiddish radio station WLTH. So you had the three critical cultural outlets there. You had a place for a theater, a place for radio, and a place to get something to eat. So the theater had fallen on hard times after Lowe's and all of the major the studios had to get rid of their theaters. And for a while, it was an independent theater. And this is a great picture on the right. I couldn't use it for the book, couldn't afford it. But it's a great picture of the theater of the Commodore. And here's Timothy Leary standing in front, the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. But if you look in the back, it says Yiddish American Vaudeville and Films. Ben Bonus, one of the great Yiddish actors after the war. This was his little mobile theater that he had in Lowe's. And if you look even further back, there's the new Ratners. So this is like a whole other part of the tradition. Imagine my surprise when I was doing the research on the Fillmore and found out that Bill Graham was a native Yiddish speaker. I mean, I think people know that he was he was a Transportkind. He was sent to England as a child, as part of the Kindertransport. But a friend of mine who knew him from the days of the original Fillmore said, "Oh yeah, him and his sister. His sister was a really great Yiddish speaker." So I just thought it was so cool that this thing kind of went back into itself. That here was this guy who was doing this the Church of Rock and Roll. I mean, the Fillmore. You know, I went to the Fillmore. You probably went to the Fillmore.
I went to the last night of the Fillmore many times, and when I read that about Bill Graham, I just thought, wow, that's crazy. And when you talk about Ratner's, after we left the Fillmore, we would go to Ratner's, and it was 3 in the morning, and yeah,
That I'm
it was a
just
second generation.
But I mean, that's what the amazing thing is that we were already in the flow
Mhm.
of this thing. And so anyway, that's the again another kind of sad story that after Bill Graham hung up his spurs and closed the Fillmore in 71, it never that was like the last of that great moment. Now, of course, it's a bank. It's like one of those 24-hour, it's a really sad kind of, retelling of what was, can you imagine all those, everything that was available in there. So yeah, so that was the Commodore story.
So I'm going to ask you if you could speak somewhat broadly about the lesser known story of the lost world of black cantors. You alluded to it earlier, but the work that you've done to unearth that story is really astounding.
Um, it still amazes me. I think the thing that is most amazing is that as Jews, we are used to people from our culture going out and mastering other art forms, Jewish jazz musicians or modern artists, and to go out of the community to become part of the larger world. What we are not so used to is people from outside coming in and mastering what we do. It's like, so imagine the 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 mixture of surprise and fear and uncertainty and just love that when a cadre of black singers, most of whom were members of Black Hebrew congregations. That is, at the time, the beginnings of the 20th century, especially in Harlem, which had a big Jewish community, the Black Hebrews, a number of synagogues started. But and it's not so surprising that someone who was a member of a Black Hebrew congregation, they need a chazan. So to have someone to rise up within an applied platform is not surprising. What I was amazed to find out were the two most popular Black cantors, Thomas LaRue Jones on the left and Goldie, Gladys May Sellers. Neither of them were Jews, and yet they both mastered Yiddish, Yiddish songs, chazonis, and spoken Hebrew. It's a story that is both inspiring and upsetting because we find these people who have dedicated themselves to inhabiting a critical place in the culture of East European Jews, and they did not know what to do with them. They were they a part of and apart from the Jewish community? Goldie was not just in the Jewish world, but she was on Broadway. She was a part of the Harlem Renaissance and knew a number of the great black performers. Sadly, unlike Thomas LaRue Jones, who made one record, the record that I waited 40 years to find. The finding of that record, my discovery of that record, scratched an itch that had been with me for most of my life. And the question was, to me, was this a joke? Was he doing this as a send up? Was it a vaudeville? Was it some sort of weird interpretive thing? But once I heard the record, and heard the mastery and the incredible insightful interpretation, I was tremendously moved because what he did, and of course I'm sad that we'll never know what Goldie sounded like, even though she was all the press about her was just through the roof. She was an amazing artist. But hearing Thomas LaRue Jones's voice, and more importantly, I actually found one side of that record was a Yiddish song that he had published, and another side was a chazunis. And I actually found the record that he copied, that he learned off of that chazunis. So by having those two records side by side, I could really interpret what he was bringing to that. And it wasn't a copy. He
Mhm.
completely internalized that performance. And in a lot of ways, he exceeded the actual Chazonis. So this story exists in a concentrated time. It's a post World War I, and it was over by the end of World War II, completely forgotten because this level of interaction between Jews and blacks had no place in the emerging relationship of Jews and African Americans. This thing would have no resonance for anyone. So rediscovering the story has been, it's like this dream you have that you're in your house and you see a door that right, that you see a door you didn't notice before and you open it up and that's what this, in fact, this whole book has been a
Mhm.
series of doors. And so that is the Schwarze Chazonim.
Well, that leads me to my last question. Nice segue, thank you. I mean, it wasn't even rehearsed. Um, just before we open it up and we have lots of questions, is there one person or a place that you felt was sort of a linchpin in telling the story or something you discovered while working on the book that was sort of an aha moment for you?
I was having a trouble limiting it to a single aha.
Mm.
I have most people have rabbit holes. I had rabbi holes. I was going through so many. I think the story for me that moved me the most was the story about Solomon Shmulevich. And it's a cautionary tale. That's what I end up coming out that here is this person. It is impossible to overstate what he did. He was a badchen, a fiddle player. He was a rabbi. He was a chazan. He was a poet. He was a composer. He was a publisher. He wrote he wrote over 500 songs. We'll never know how many songs he wrote. He wrote some of the greatest Yiddish songs of the 20th century. A Brivele der Mammen, the Tulpen Titanic, unbelievable output. Books of poetry, and yet for his being this poet of the people and being uh, so ubiquitous in the lives of Jews, he lived in dire poverty for the large portion of his life. And it took me down this rabbit hole about our great heroes and the heroines in Yiddish culture who were not celebrated ultimately for their great contributions. And Shmulevitz was one. He kind of exemplified the forgotten but not gone. That was his status. And it became like a mission to me to reassemble his incredible life. And one of the things that I was so happy about was that a friend of mine, a Husid, who has taken it on himself to take photographs of every matzeva, every headstone of a Yiddish theater performer, a cantor, or klezmer musicians. He has several thousand photographs of matzevas, which is an incredible resource for research. And he ended up sending me a photograph of Shmulevitz's matzeva, and in which I learned that Shmulevitz wrote his own epitaph and this picture of it, and it was in his favorite style, which was a the poem has it's an acrostic, spells out his name. So I really enjoyed the task of recreating his Matseva, the inscription, as he would have done it with his name and following the rhyming pattern. But unfortunately, I found out that not only Shmulevitz, but people like Frank Seiden and Bernstein from the Libby's Hotel, none of them, considering what they had done in the Yiddish world in New York, none of them have obituaries in any of the Yiddish press, and that really broke my heart. That these people who were so dedicated to being an integral part of the Jewish community were forgotten when they passed, and even though they were in the paper numerous times while they lived. So it's I think what I came away with, the aha moment, is sort of, it's all fleeting, and Shmulevitz took responsibility for his own matseva. So in essence, he had the last word. So, but I think that's what kind of gave a structure to my book, is that I would like to think that in a way I have given a voice to those people in our community who have fallen through the cracks of of the historiography of this time. And here is a place where they get to be and have their own voice.
Thank you. So I'm going to jump into questions while we still have some time
Oh,
here.
I'm sorry. Did I do
No,
go
no,
on?
this was wonderful. I've been watching the time, I promise you. Um, how do you explain that Yiddish leaders did not have published obituaries?
Gosh, good question. It's shocking to me. P.S. Where did they all had obits in the Times, so it wasn't like it fell off. So I can't explain it, except that I found in retrospect some of the Gvirim, some of the Große Shene Yidden were should not have been in charge, and this was especially when people were in a terrible time in their lives. They were overlooked. It's sort of a tragedy, so I can't explain it, any more than saying it happened more than once, so it was not a mistake.
Um, how much of all of this history can still be seen today, on the streets of New York?
New York is relentless about consuming itself. Penn Station, anyone? So very little of the actual structures. As I said, the theater on 12th Street and Second Avenue, the Angelica, had a beautiful restoration. You go in there and you can really see the glories of the Wiseman construction. Other places are merely an address. Katz's Delicatessen, that's the same place it's been since 1931. Jonas Schimmel's, they've been in that building since 1910. As the Russin daughters, also same building. So some of the history is accessible. Some of the physical places are there. Others are just addresses. And the Lower East Side is relentless. There was, again, if you can tear down the Libby's Hotel, such an astounding construction. These the little Pizzalach tenements, they go down pretty easy comparatively. So not a lot of that physical history, but as I mentioned in the book, this is a tour of the collective culture, and the remnants, not just the buildings, but the end result of the great production that these people made.
Um, two questions which are sort of related. What was the Hazon that Jones recorded, and forgive this Goyam's confusion, what type of music was on the B side of that 78? I don't recognize the word that Mr. Sapoznik used.
There were the flip side, the Yiddish side of the record was a song that was actually written by Sholem Secunda very early in his career before he wrote by Mir bis to Shane. Verlier no nit dein Hoffnung, Reb Yid. Don't give up hope, Mr. Jew. And it's a song that really goes into the history of the affliction upon the Jews, and the chorus that says, just believe, just don't give up hope, and we will survive. And it was such a, for me, it was really interesting because here he was, as a black man, singing about the afflictions that were being visited upon the Jews. And at the same time that he recorded this in 1920, blacks were being lynched, Jews were being killed in pogroms in Poland. So it was an incredible. LaRue Jones could have performed some nice frothy love song or a clever comic song to show off his Yiddish, but he decided to do something that underscored the eons long relationship of Jews and their identity. The Chazan, who recorded the same piece, was a Chazan named Shlomo Rothstein, and from Russia. And interestingly, Chazan Rothstein was a better Chazan. He had the Chazunis Shtiklach, those little nobules that linked the notes. He had those. They were, but Thomas LaRue Jones was the superior singer and brought an emotion that didn't exist quite the same way. So it was just fascinating to have them next to each other.
In a related question, were the Black Khazans embraced by the Jewish audiences?
Well, again, they existed, and I don't have if you look back on see the poster, here was the Lenox Theater in Harlem, one of the major Yiddish theaters. Um, uh, Abe Kahan, who was the editor of the Forwards, wrote a review of this play, and he says, "Yeah, you can go see the Chuppah Play. It's wonderful, great actors, but what you really got to go see is the Schwarze Chasen." And people were so touched and moved by their artistry, and yet it's I write about a concert that LaRue Jones gave in Europe in the early 30s. It's a tragic story about the Jewish community not believing he was a Jew and wanting him to go into the mikveh and show them that he was a Jew, despite the fact that he had this beautiful Yiddish and that he had a really, they all acknowledge, oh yeah, he's great. He sings the Chazonis great. But it was a very strange, strained dynamic between the Jewish community and these artists, and one that still, you know, it's troubling. It's I don't think the people were equipped to how to navigate through this.
Did Sholem Secunda write the music for Joseph Siden's films?
Um, Good question.
Yeah.
I think Secunda did. There were a couple of the composers who did write music. That was the thing with. In fact, there was one of Seiden's films, A Brivele der Mamen. It's kind of interesting going back to Shmulevich, and here it was in the same title as Shmulevich's song, but they didn't use his music. He wasn't credited, and there was a whole new score. I don't. It wasn't Secunda, who wasn't Olshanetsky. I'll think of it in a second, but it was sort of a sad thing that here again, one of the great Yiddish filmmakers was using the work of another, and the guy, and Shmulevitz was still alive when the film was made, so he was never approached by it. It's just a strange dynamic that you figure here were people living in this one community, and you'd think, oh, they're well connected in their interchange, and it does not seem to have been the case.
Um, I'm going to make this the last question, if I may, which is what were some of the challenges of researching the book and finding out? Was excuse me, a commercial interruption. The composer of the score, Abby Eystein.
A big gesint.
Yeah.
Um, that
Was
I'm
it?
very sad. I'm blocking. I know.
Okay.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was
Okay, yeah.
okay.
I
We had a
okay.
suggestion. But I'll go back to the last question, which is, what were some of the challenges of finding these stories and doing this research? Was most of it in Yiddish, or was it spread out through lots of newspapers or collections?
Yeah. Newspapers. The National Library of Israel. Their Yiddish newspaper collection online is second to none.
Mhm.
And I was able to a lot of these stories had never been told before. I relied very heavily. As I said, I had about 5,000, went through about 5,000 downloads of Yiddish and Anglo-Jewish newspaper articles. A
Mhm.
lot of this stuff had to be augmented with research from other areas, like census reports, the Yiska books, and memoirs. So it was a kind of a crazy quilt of um, of research sources. Really thrilling in a lot of ways because a lot of these pieces had not been put together before, and doing the backstory on this stuff from these sources and doing the translations. I was just really thrilling. I really enjoyed. I think I enjoyed the research, which I don't know if I should admit it. I enjoyed the research more than the writing. I just love doing the undercover work. So
Cool.
yeah, it was a task, but a task I did with great joy.
It's reflected in the results. Thank you, Henry, for all you've done and all that you continue to do to tell the story of Yiddish. And thank you for joining us this evening. Again, for those of you in the audience, the tourist guide to Lost New York City, it's available at shop.yiddishbookcenter.org, wherever the fine books are sold. And oh, quick question, audio version?
Oh, yes, thank you. I am in the process of, I have a GoFundMe campaign to do an audiobook. And if folks are interested in helping out, if you go to GoFundMe and put in the title, The Tourist's Guide to Lost Yiddish New York City, you can help do the audiobook. I'm very excited by it, and I hope that it's going to be out in a couple of months.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for joining us. Keep up the good work and drop by and pay us a visit one of these days. For all of you out there this evening, please join us again on Thursday, September 25th at 7 p.m. when we present Letters from the Afterlife, the post-Holocaust correspondence of Chava Rosenfarb and Xenia Larson with Goldie Morgenthaler. To learn more about that program, to register, and to see our full and very packed calendar of events, both online, in person, and in cities around the country, visit yiddishbookcenter.org/events. Thanks, as always, to our producer, Elizabeth Carteropoli-Dearden, who makes everything run smoothly and gets you in the theater when there's not even a seat. And thanks to all of our members whose support makes all of our work possible. To learn more about how you can support the Yiddish Book Center, please visit yiddishbookcenter.org and learn how you can become a member, give a gift membership, or become a sustaining member so we can continue to bring you these programs. Until the next time, Happy New Year coming up. We look forward to seeing you again in the audience. Until then, stay well, stay happy, and stay in touch. Good night.